Hello and welcome to Think About That. I am Aaron Hale and it is February 26th, 2019. A couple things to get to today. Quick update. I just rearranged the whole office. Just got done doing that. Just put a new graphics card in the computer, so maybe I'll even be able to up the um, quality of what's going out. I'm looking into that. I finally broke down. I'm admitting it publicly. I caved to pressure and purchased for myself and my wife bikes, pedal bikes. Bike you ride around on. I haven't ridden one since I was, 17 or 18 years old. 10 years now. It'll be fun. Um, but we've been needing to get into. We've been doing something physical, and she's been wanting to try biking for a couple of years, I think. Yeah, easy a couple of years now. So when just kind of had the money and did it, bought myself a bike, and I got a few things to go with it. Here's a mount for the handlebars for my phone, and here's some new headphones to go riding with they're not like earbuds, so they don't go in your ear. They don't stop you from hearing the things around you. Because I've been told by people who ride bikes that not being able to hear what's going on around you is a hazard to you. You get snuck up on by cars. It's not a good thing. And these were just $20, and I like them so far. I've been using them, just trying them out today. I just got them, and they're basically just a speaker that sits in front of your ear, and you can, somebody sitting next to you can hear what you're listening to, so they're not private. But they don't restrict what I hear around me, and they actually work with my soundboard again, so I'm able to actually wirelessly have a Bluetooth that connects to my soundboard. So no more of that cable where my head's getting pulled. Um, so that's nice. Anyway, the bike is not going to be here till just after my birthday. And I'm not saying when that is. If you know when that is, that's cool. It's soon. Um, the wife's bike should be here before mine, and she opted for this like 7-speed beach cruiser thing. She's not going anywhere fast, but of course, you know me, I go all out. So I got the fast bike, and I mean, God willing, I'd like to work back up into being some kind of a decent shape. I've really let myself go since I was in the army, with school, and just my excuse has always been, well, I'm so busy, but you can't serve Christ well without health. It's important. If you're dealing with headaches or fatigue or things, and they will limit your service to the kingdom. So, it's like Paul said, physical exercise profiteth little. In other words, it's not a priority, but it is something you should do as long as the priorities are being met. And I really was putting it off. I wasn't planning on doing it till I got out of school, but the wife talked me into it. Anyway, kind of today want to jump into three different topics, just things that came up this week. The first one, and I've got a couple links in the video description, but the BBC News reported on a South African funeral firm, and this is the title of the article. A South African funeral firm to sue pastor for resurrection stunt. Give the gist of the article. Basically, there was a faked resurrection. At least they're saying it's a faked resurrection. And we know there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. I've read a lot of articles recently about that. In the movements in the South Africa, and if you've ever read a book called I loaned this book and I don't think I ever got it back. It's called The Next Christendom: Christianity in the Global South. It really highlights the massive amount of Christianity happening. Nations changing national religions to Christianity. Millions, it's billions of people. What the author titles the Global South, which is third world, not westernized countries. Around the world, millions of people coming to Christ. So there's good things going on, but there are bad things going on as well. And what I wanted to bring up about the article, you can read it. is that the funeral home says, look, the man was already alive. It was a stunt, and we wish we hadn't been involved in it. We are now going to sue this pastor because he took it way further than he told us he was going to take it, etc. And as you read through the article, there's a specific statement from the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities, if I can talk today. So, the Commission for the Promulgation or the Promotion of and Protection of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities said, there's no such thing as miracles, inside quotes. And when you fake miracles, when you drum up something that's not really there, and I'm going to tie this to our Western North American culture here in just a second, but as soon as when you fake it, you just make that statement stick. You're really playing the enemy's game. You're helping the enemy when you're lying. Jesus said he's the father of liars. He's liar. That's his natural language. So when you lie, you're not helping. You're not in God's kingdom. A quiet, holy, loving Christianity is far better than any drummed up fake miracles can be. And we see it in U.S. culture in a couple of different ways. We want the lights on stage and the smoke machines and the a lot of that's a show. And I'm not going to sit here and say don't do that. It's okay to do things well. Do things in a way that you're putting your heart and soul into it. But it's not a show. And that's what happened here. Is it was a show. It was put on, and they got called out on it, and it doesn't look good on Christianity. It doesn't. It's not good on Christianity. So when and the people behind it are sticking to the story that it was a real miracle. And if you look at it, you have looked at, if you've looked at these things, it wasn't. It's just something that we do. The bigger, churches we build, why do people come and go to a 10,000 person church? A lot of the time it's the spectacle. I've gone to a couple of mega churches here in the United States and been like, they're at least they were saying Jesus's name, but it was a lot of show, and we need to stay away from that, and we especially need to stay away from the idea that we need to drum up the power of God in Christianity. There's nothing like the testimony of a simple life, a simple God-fearing, people-loving life. That's the kind of miracle that it hits the ground running and it doesn't stop and it can't be denied. When you have that testimony of that, this person's really different. I heard a great episode of Renewing Your Mind, the Ligonier podcast this morning on Thomas Goodwin, and the testimony of his life was he was a brilliant theologian, but he loved everybody. I mean, it was central to what he did, and it made him. You look and the power that it gave him in just simply being truly loving to the people around him, even people he disagreed with, is amazing. And the best apologists, the people that I respect the most, I see that in them. They're willing to reach out and have a conversation with someone from another faith without attacking them or insulting them or calling them stupid or red herring, straw manning their faith. Just have a real conversation. Does your faith really work? And if you do have a real conversation, if you do real Christianity, it's obvious it works. The rest of the world doesn't. You can't. Borrowing from Francis Schaeffer heavily when I just simply point out that you can't have Francis Schaeffer and Ravi Zacharias. It's coherent. You can live the Christian life, and you go to any other religion, you really can't live it. And it goes as far in things like Islam where people are willing to die because you can't live it. If you truly believing that if you die, if you kill yourself, if you do this work, you're guaranteed to reach heaven. When and that's it's such a powerful it's a powerful deception, and that's one thing about Christianity is when it's not on you, when you can place your faith and work in the person of Jesus Christ and what He's done, the power that it has for you is just the freedom. You can live this, and that's the message of the that's the message of Christianity. It's not that you come to our church, somebody's going to be coming back from the dead tomorrow. That's not the persistent message of Christianity that has existed over the last 2,000 years. It's people who meet Christ find a way to live that gives them actual freedom. They can actually live it. They can actually enjoy it. They can actually love it. They can actually be the person that God created them to be. Okay, so I'll get off that soapbox and move on to another one. I've had this. How do I say this? So I want to be careful because there's the article it's posted in the video. It's a Facebook link to USA and the article is just entitled "Trump Admin Cuts $60 million from Planned Parenthood," and I've had so many Christians share this article with me, just jumping up and down in celebration, saying, "Yes, great news! Planned Parenthood losing $60 million," and I'm maybe it's I'm just a little bit more skeptical, but I sit here and I go, so what about the other 390 million? Now, honor where honor's due, the Trump administration has cost Planned Parenthood about $180 million in revenue over this year and going forward until some other president changes it. And that's the nature of executive orders. It's just the next president comes in and rewrites those orders and it's done. And that's the core of what I'm talking about here. We should be thankful that a organization that's murdering people is losing money, and we should be thankful for that. We should be thankful that less of our tax dollars are going to fund this organization. But at the same time, as Christians, we have to have and I'll use the word abolitionist, even though there's some people misusing it. We have to have a standard that says no. A single murder is too much, and I'm not going to be happy. I'll clap a little and I'll say good job when you make steps in the right direction, but I'm not going to be happy until this is over. I'm not going to be happy until sex trafficking doesn't happen. I'm not going to be happy until I can say that my country doesn't murder people before they're born. And just the poignancy of this point comes in from what happened in the Senate the last couple of days, where the bill that and all it does is simply say you can't kill a baby that didn't die when you tried to abort it. That's basically what the law says. You have to give it the best health care you can and not leave it there to die, which is what they do right now, which is what abortion providers do. Is if a baby is born alive, they just set it aside and say, well, we can't kill this, but we don't have to take care of it. And all the bill said was, if they survive your murder attempt, you have to take care of them. And it didn't pass in our Senate. And just think about that, the moral shift that happened there in just the last 10, 15 years. 15 years ago, that bill would have passed in a heartbeat. But today, the divide in our country between the two parties is extraordinarily powerful, and I'm grateful for all the people that stepped up and voted for that. But again, while we're clapping about $60 million cut from Planned Parenthood, the Senate of our country fails to save people's lives. It just goes to show, as Christians, we need to be very careful in thinking about how we respond to these things. It's okay to be approving and even joyful when things go in the right direction, but we have to have a no tolerance policy. You can't You just can't murder. We have to stand here and say we're gonna keep standing here. We're gonna keep saying it, and we're gonna keep voting it. And we're gonna keep working on it um, until there's no more murdering happening. And if you really want to be a thinking Christian, ponder the uh, biblical job of a Christian when paying taxes goes to uh, uh, people that murder. I think because of the Hyde Amendment right now, we're relatively protected. But as a thinking Christian, that thought should have gone through our mind that there's going to become a place where I just simply can't support the U.S. government anymore. And what does that mean? I'm not just voting for I'm just voting for life. I'm voting for being able to participate in this country's electoral process, for being able to say I'm an American. Um, there's so much to think about when you're here as a Christian, and I've had, just to take it back to the Bible, when I mention not having to pay your taxes, or having a let me use the having a conscientious objection to paying your taxes. And I warn people all the time, you should pay attention to your conscience. If you're a Christian, especially, because God designed that to help guide you. It's very important. But when you have potential conscientious objection to paying taxes, I've had people come to me and say, well, that doesn't exist because the Roman Empire was having these, they had the Colosseum and these war games, and Jesus said, well, pay your taxes to Caesar. Um, well, I've had several people tell me that. And unfortunately, the Colosseum wasn't built until 70 or 80 AD. 40 years after Jesus walked the earth. The Roman Empire was a much different place in Jesus' day than it was, say, 150 years later, say 40 to 70 years later. And it was Peter who stood before the Sanhedrin and said, we have to say what God tells us to say and do what God tells us to do, even if you're going to beat us. So we have to, as Christians, we have to be thinking correctly about these issues, and not running to a single verse and making a statement about it. And I've had ever since I even started talking about the issue of coming to a point where conscientiously I can't support the U.S. government. Um, from the moment I started talking about that, I've had Christians telling me that never happens. You always have to pay your taxes, and I don't think so. I think there is a time coming in the future where you have to say I don't support this, and if you're a premillennial, like myself, someone who believes in a future 7-year tribulation with a antichrist government, if you were to say miss the rapture, should you support that government? No, that's called taking the mark of the beast. So there is a time when you say I don't support this anymore. And if you to appeal to a more American way of thinking, it the founding fathers and the revolutionaries that said we're not taking this anymore. We're not paying taxes to the government where we don't have the right representation. When the government is using your money and you have no voice about how it's being used, you have the same complaint that the founding fathers of this country had. We're being taxed without proper representation. So moving on from those topics, this is kind of almost a hodgepodge episode because I'm jumping around. Normally I have one thing to talk about, but those two came up over the week, and I heard so much bad thinking about them over the past few months. I just had to address it. As a Christian, we really need to be comfortable with the idea that a simple, God-fearing life is the best testimony of Christianity. There's nothing we have to drum up. And when we look at victories, when we look at $60 million being cut from Planned Parenthood, we have to also keep in balance that People are being murdered. The Supreme Court hasn't done anything about it. Congress just failed to help do things about it. The fight's not over. So we clap and we keep moving forward. And we must, as Christians, say nothing. No. We're not going to be satisfied until there is no more murder. So, let's talk about a more abstract, more Christian, inside Christianity issue, or at least a more theological issue, and get away from politics. Because I'll just be honest. My whole life, and I guess I think technically I'm a millennial by 1 year. I think they say it like started in '84 and I was born in '85, or something like that. But my whole life I've never, every time that a politician does something good, I look at him like, I didn't expect that. I expected you to lie to me. I expected you to not do what you were supposed to do. And with just that being said, I haven't put much hope in politics. I don't put much hope in the success of the election of the right person, or the right person appointed to the court, or all of that. And I understand my job in social duty to provide a voice for those that don't have voice, to help shape my nation, in a nation that's supposed to be by the people and for the people. But I don't find any joy in that. That's a duty. When it comes to Christianity, on the other hand, when it comes to Christ, I have found someone who has never failed me, who's never left me, who's never lied to me, who's always had the answer and does have the answer for everything, and has been gracious enough to proclaim it in the stars, to write it in his word, to build you, to write it on the tablets of your heart, in such a way. So when I have to talk about politics, it's when I get to talk about Jesus, that's what I can talk all day. So the subject I want to talk about is, I read a person who calls himself a Protestant. This is on Facebook, and if he listens to this, I'm sure he'll know I'm talking about him. And you guys know me. I don't spend a lot of time using people's names, unless you're a published author, unless you're a pastor, or someone who steps into this situation and says, I have authority to speak here and you should listen to me. And if you do that, then I'm going to use your name. But if you're just somebody that I read something on Facebook, I'm not going to use your name. But they talked about praying the Rosary on a daily basis. And like I said, for the person who seems to call themselves a Protestant, although as I've been watching and listening, it seems to turning more and more Roman Catholic every day. And and I would challenge you, open up the Roman Catholic Catechism, go through each thing that it states, and test whether it's scriptural, and then decide what your authority is. Is your authority the church and tradition, or is it scripture? I'm a Protestant, sola scriptura. The scripture is my authority. It's the sole infallible rule of faith for the church. Anything that disagrees with it, Pope, Council, Joe Schmo, doesn't matter. Scripture wins, period. And that means all we have left to fight about is interpretation. What does this scripture mean, or what does that scripture mean? So, and we handle that with scripture, interpreting scripture. But with that being said, as I did, I see a comment of praying the Rosary every day, and that triggers a thought, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, can a Protestant do that? Is it valuable? Should we just throw that out because it's Roman Catholic? Not necessarily. We should be careful with it. But what is it? So and I realized I don't really actually know what the Rosary is exactly. I've read the Catechism, so the basic idea of it and what it is. But what would a Protestant praying the Rosary look like? And as I thought about it, and as I looked up and I said, okay, and it goes, okay, well, there's this part where you say Our Father, say, and then you got three Hail Marys, and then you got these scriptures, and I'm like, well, I like that. You have to meditate on scripture and recite scripture and memorize scripture. That seems good, right? And then we got God the Father, yeah, I like God the Son, and then we come back to Hail Marys, and I'm sitting there going, well, I guess this really comes down to what we can say about invoking the name of Mary and saints, and what it says about Jesus Christ. What does it say about what does it say about what we believe about Jesus? So, taking a step back, and I've said many times, most of the time I won't debate a Roman Catholic over Marian statements, because the issue is deeper. The issue is a gospel issue. The issue is centered around what does it mean to be justified. What is the how is merit of justification applied to a believer, a Christian? When you say you believe in Jesus Christ, what's happening there? That's the core issue between Protestant and Catholic, and Roman Catholic. I should always say Roman Catholic because I am part of the Catholic Church in a Nicene creed, or Apostles' Creed kind of way. But so, like I said, most of the time I won't fight with a Roman Catholic about Marian dogmas because the issue is deeper. But in this case, when we're talking about the Rosary, talking about praying to the Father, praying to the Son, praying the Scriptures, all of those things in the Rosary are great. But the real issue is, well, what does it say that I'm saying, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord was with you? When I'm saying this, what does it mean? And we're talking about a view of Christ here. In the New Testament, if you read the New Testament, you find a Christ, and I'm teaching Hebrews right now, which is, if you want to disagree with me on this, you better be able to show me exegetically from Hebrews that I'm misinterpreting it. But you see a Christ in Hebrews that is entirely powerful enough to save to the uttermost. You have statements in Hebrews, and like Hebrews 10, where it says, is it 12? 10 or 12? Where it says that he has justified for all time those who are being sanctified. In other words, the work's finished. It's done. No other work being done. It is complete. It's finished, final, in an ending way of saying things. And the next thing you find in Hebrews is this overwhelming, loving Christ. It says that he's borne our sorrows and our iniquities, and he's acquainted with the grief that we have. And he, the writer of Hebrews makes it very clear that Jesus is not standing up there angry at you. You don't need any other mediator, because he desires, at the core of who he is, to love his bride and intercede for them. You couldn't beat him to it. He's the first one there. He's taking on the enemy and the challenge. He's willing to take on death. He's willing to take on the battle of the sin nature itself in order to destroy it. And when we add and when we bring in this idea of praying to the saints or praying to Mary, so they go to this Jesus who is now removed one step from us, we now don't have we're not seeing the same Jesus that's in the book of Hebrews or the New Testament. The Jesus that's close to me, the Jesus that understands who I am, the Jesus who literally lives. It's his goal, it's his life mission to stand before the Father to make an intercession for me. So I don't think that a Protestant can pray the Rosary simply because of the Marian issue. Now, it's not about not recognizing the qualities of Mary. And I think it's probably a proper critique that sometimes Protestants overreact and don't talk about Mary enough. She was a pretty uh, heavily talked about subject in the first few centuries. So, uh, you know, you know, how much we talk about Mary, that's fine. But when we place the need for saints, when we place for need for other people to go to Jesus and because Jesus likes them more than he likes us, we miss the fundamental Jesus of the New Testament. And um, if you're a Protestant, you say I'm a Protestant, and you're praying the Rosary, you're missing the point. You don't know the same Jesus that I know. Luckily and thankfully that we in such finite beings that we can be in grave error and be saved because he is saving, but it's still grave error and it's dangerous. And if you're a Protestant and you pray the Rosary, or if you have Roman Catholic friends, I challenge you to go through the book of Hebrews and see over and over and over again this Messiah that suffered for you because he loves you, and he is the one who wants to make intercession for you. He is the one that wants you to call on him to be saved. He's the one that wants a relationship with you personally, nobody in the middle. Um, this is just the overwhelming testimony of the New Testament. So, we covered a lot today, and broke it down. Some subjects that I don't like to talk about, some that I do, some that I feel are and obviously the last one, um, the supremacy of Christ in our salvation, and the fact that justification is by faith alone is um, it's the most important. It because it's the without it you don't have salvation itself. You don't have anything. You don't have you have no reason to fight abortion because you're dead already. It's all over already without that. So it's very serious, and we'll go ahead and end it here. So with that being said, God bless you, and think about that.